Hi, I'm Rebekah Graham. I live here in Hamilton, which is where I've also based my research. However, I am doing my PhD through Massey, Albany. So I'm based up there. My supervisors are Professor Darren Hodgetts and Professor Kerry Chamberlain from Massey, Albany, and also Dr. Otley Stolt from here in Hamilton. Today I'll be talking primarily about my research, but also how it relates to broader issues around food insecurity and precarity. For my research, I based myself here in Hamilton and went along to a community meal here in Hamilton. So this community meal, they offer a free hot meal once a week, a two-course meal, a main and a dessert. And every Wednesday night they offer this meal, and anyone can go along. So predominantly members of the precariat, but it's open to anybody who wishes to come. They do a gold coin donation, although if you don't have a gold coin, that's fine too. It's no big deal. So every week they set up the hall, people set up the hall. And one of the important features about this meal is that it's not just that sort of disposable plates for disposable people type mentality. It's that there's an emphasis on the humanity and the dignity, and the way the food is plated up is just as important as the provision of tables and chairs and tablecloths and proper plates, proper crockery, glasses, canisters of water. The whole thing, it's not just about providing food, but it's also about providing a meal and all the rituals and routines and the social interaction that goes along with a proper dinner, or constructions of a proper dinner at any rate. So I've included some images which are in the PowerPoint alongside. So the first image shows the space of the meal. And this is quite important because the space of the meal gives an indication of how many people are coming. So they have between 150 and 250 come along, depending on the week and what else is happening. So people come in and sit down. They have a servery area, so when they're ready, they'll open up the servery. Someone will say grace for the meal, and then people help themselves, line up and get their dinner, come back, sit down, eat the dinner. If there's seconds, there's opportunity to have seconds, and then dessert, and then a cup of tea. So the first photo shows just the empty space. So the hall has all been set up, the tables have been laid out. Volunteers who are members of the precariat themselves will turn up at 6 o'clock on the day. That's not quite true. They'll turn up about 7, get up at 6, come wait for Bobby to open up, and then get on with setting and preparing. So they'll spend the day setting up the tables, preparing the meal. The second image shows people in the space of the meal. So shows the meal space being used by people. So there's a newspaper, a free newspaper that's provided. So people read the newspaper, they sit down, they chat to one another. It shows people interacting and using the space. What I did in terms of my research is I went along every week for about a year. And initially, people weren't particularly interested in talking to me. It took probably between 2 and 3 months before anybody was really interested in talking to me. So that's how long it took, of just going every week and meeting people and saying hello and having a chat, to get beyond the outsider, I don't want to talk to you, to, oh, this person knows me a little bit, isn't too dreadful, might be okay. And from the community meal, I then met further with people who agreed to participate in my research, and had a series of interviews with each of these families around food and what happened in the household. Went along with them as they brought their groceries. They took photographs of their world of food. So really immersed in their world and what's happening, with a focus on every day. So just what happens in the everyday. How do you provide food for everyone in the family? What do you do? So in terms of this web lecture. I'll talk a little bit about my research, a little bit about the meal, and then also about the participants and highlight some of the participant stories from there. So we've already talked about the meal and the space of the meal and what happens in the meal, that people come and enjoy the space of the meal. What I haven't talked about is that sense of solidarity from coming in, from having a big group of people who are all experiencing really similar circumstances, just being able to come together and enjoy eating together, and that sense of not being alone, not being isolated, that it's not just you. And people did comment on that that coming there and seeing it's not just me, and the sense of failure and shame that people often feel like not being able to provide food for their families, or being hungry, or not being able to manage. And then coming to a space like the meal and seeing that actually it's not just them, that there are lots of people in this situation. There are families in this situation. There's older people in this situation. There are people who are struggling with their health in this situation. That their struggle is not just an individual failure, that there is something happening on a societal level where a number of people are really in the same situation and struggling. In providing a humanising space, it also provides a space of respite. So people are able to come and just have a bit of a breather from constantly being told, you don't belong here, we don't want you here, you're not the sort of person we like to have around here. Those sorts of messages that people who really don't have enough money to manage, those are the messages that people get all the time. We don't want you on our buses. We don't want you in our civic spaces. We don't want you in the library. And that's just incredibly dehumanising and cruel, and it's hard. It's hard on people when they get those messages all the time, everywhere they go. So the meal provides a space from that, a break from that. It provides a space where you're seen as a person, where people care about how they're putting the food on your plate, where they're happy to take your plates away from you, where they understand that people need a break from constantly being told that they're not wanted or not accepted or not a part of society. And in coming together, that solidarity, that sense of something bigger than you, that it's not just you, but also that somebody recognises your humanity and the dignity of you as a person is incredibly important, and also hugely important for counteracting psychologically and emotionally a lot of that negativity. So it helps restore people's resilience and helps restore people's capacity and ability to then go out and face it for another week. So all of those things are really important, and it's not just about the provision of a hot filling meal, which is hugely important, but it's also about humanity and dignity and solidarity and respite and care and resilience, and a lot of those psychological aspects that often get overlooked when we're talking about food insecurity. You may have noticed a lot of the public discourses around food insecurity, they're individualising, they're blaming people, but they're also heavily focused on the food aspect, or the nutrition aspect, or the health aspect, and they overlook things like social determinants of health and psychological components of care. And that's really, in terms of my research, one of the things that we were highlighting is that there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on in this space, in the meal space, that is more than just about a hot meal. And the next image, there's an image there of the preparation. So members of the precariat who also participate in eating the meal do the work of preparing the meal. So they come, as I mentioned earlier, they come quite early in the morning and spend the day there. And again, that speaks to things like participation and inclusion and belonging and meaning. When I talk to those that are preparing the meal, they overwhelmingly said, I wouldn't be doing anything else. I'd just be at home being bored. There's nothing else for me to do. So for them, the meal isn't just about the food. It's about participating in something, belonging, the sort of banter that you get in an employment situation. They can come and then spend the day teasing each other and engaging in that sort of working together at doing something and belonging to something and creating something and being able to have those conversations around it. And again, it's not just about preparing the food and peeling the potatoes and setting the table and putting out the chairs. It's about value. It's about feeling connected beyond just the individual person or just the individual self. That social belonging, that social participation, that people, particularly when there's not enough money, it's a lot harder for people to participate, particularly in wider activities and events which are often have a monetary cost.